Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with some more 11th edition goodness. So I obviously am a big fan of a lot of the changes they have so far mentioned for the 11th edition. One of them key ones which I really enjoy is I don't want circles all over my table dictating objectives. Doesn't make any sense to me. I love the idea of there being bespoke sets of scenery which you are fighting over. You know, the plasma generator or the field hospital or the command bunker or those key kind of points on a battlefield which makes sense for an army to want to take or destroy or hold and stuff like that. So with that in mind, I thought we would do kind of like an eBay rescue style video today where we rescue an old piece of Games Workshop history, get it cleaned up, get it painted up looking immaculate and ready for 11th edition, and a piece of scenery that if someone told you we're fighting over that, it makes a lot of sense. And this is what we're going to try and be saving. So this is the old destroyed Rhino piece of scenery. It is seen better days. This one actually has a funny story because this exact piece of one, this one I'm currently holding, was painted up for my store when I worked for Games Workshop in Dublin. We kind of cracked this one open and we did it as the display piece. And it got painted up and it got repainted up over and over and over again. When I left Games Workshop, the manager that came in at the time decided that any piece of scenery that Games Workshop didn't currently sell was being gotten rid of. There was no point in having it displayed on the tables if someone couldn't come in and buy it. So all of that stuff then got donated to my friend's shop, Underworld Gaming, the guys that sponsored today's video with this awesome box set, which we will talk about in a moment. And I was in there running a tank workshop on the weekend and I spotted this thing on the shelf and I just had to have it. So I stole it. Sorry, Nathan. So I'm going to be reclaiming this and I'm going to bring it up to its former, or I don't think it's ever really been in glory, but bring it back to what I think it should have always looked like, and hopefully helping it blend in with the table that I have here. And for playing games in 11th edition, it will make a lot of sense to be the scenery. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. Before we get into that, a huge thank you to everyone out there that supports the channel by liking videos, commenting on videos, and making sure that you're subscribed. And anyone out there that goes the extra mile and supports us over on Patreon. Obviously, there's a whole host of reasons to be involved in the Patreon. Extra videos, podcast episodes, access to a private Discord server, and of course, the monthly giveaway. You guys love a giveaway, and I love giving stuff away. So this month's giveaway is this. This is April's giveaway for 2026. If you want to be on a chance of winning this awesome Raider box set for the new Eldar faction, I will be giving this box set away and shipping it anywhere in the world at my expense to one lucky person who signed up to the Patreon at any tier. So check that out, linked below. Okay, that's quite enough words. Let's dive in and try and rescue this piece of scenery. Okay, first things first. I gave them the whole scenery piece a bath because this has been sitting in miniature stores for over a decade. So I'm fairly sure it was covered in dust and all sorts of other grossness. So I thought, you know what, let's just clean it all off first, get rid of all that surface dust and dirt and debris before we go on to the actual kind of stripping and cleaning of the model. So I just put it in a kind of a warm soapy bath. Used a brush to agitate the dust and dirt and debris out. Try and lift up some of the original PVA glue. Before I realized that obviously that wasn't going to take up what I wanted to. I was wondering whether the sand that was on the base was attached with PVA glue. If it was, the water should have reactivated and all should have fallen off. Maybe I could have just sprayed it, but I realized I was going to have to do something much more kind of heavy duty. So took the water out, dried the model off as best I could, and then put on this gross, I hate this stuff so much. But I covered the entire model on it. I put the lid on and then I waited 24 hours, well not really 24 hours, till the next morning before I could crack it open and reveal this disgusting soup of a scenery piece. It is gross. The stuff, like I genuinely hate working with this stuff, but it does work. It eats through all of the paint, it gets rid of it. I've got the gloves on. It's actually completely like safe for your hands and stuff, which is kind of weird. But the gloves is more because it's just staining and it's gross. And as you can see, the paint is coming off in big like peels and it's just not nice. So I did not film the rest of this because no one wants to watch me scrubbing that disgusting scenery. But anyway, it took it back down to basically the black primer. The primer is always the most difficult thing to ever remove. You're never going to go back to grey plastic with a strip model, I don't think. It's just not going to happen. But it didn't remove a lot of the things. So as you can see, this is quite rough and quite damaged looking and just not exactly. I wanted to go a little bit nicer with it. So I did break out the isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush. Now I couldn't submerge the model in isopropyl alcohol because that would just dissolve and melt the plastic. But with a toothbrush, so you're not applying that much to any specific area, and a little bit of elbow grease and scrubbing. You can remove any of those kind of stubborn areas, anywhere it's supposed to be a lot of detail, all those kind of bullet holes in the side of the tank that you're going to want to be nice and clean. I got in around kind of cupola there, kind of vent cracks and stuff, and I just scrubbed all of those off. I wasn't too worried about the rest of the scenery piece. It was mostly the Rhino that I wanted to make sure was nice and smooth, because this was going to be obviously the focal point of the entire piece. So I wanted to have as clean a base as I could work from. So I did spend a little bit of extra time getting that looking nice. And you can see it getting smoother with each kind of stroke of the brush, which is exactly what I wanted. And with that done, and with the rest of the kind of stubborn bits removed, the model was about as clean as was possible, ready to get. So I spent a little bit of time with some scalpel cleaning out the kind of top hatch area, removing the old hinges, because there was doors on this thing at one point. They were glued kind of half or semi-open, but it did allow you to see through the hole, which was then just like the table underneath, which I didn't really like that much. You should be seeing the interior of a wrecked tank. So I decided that I was just going to seal it up. So I got some super glue. I reattached the side wall, making sure to get a nice solid seal with super glue. I sanded it down to try and get rid of as much of the old seams as possible. And then I did 3D print a Rhino hatch, and I glued that into place to kind of cover up that kind of missing section of tank. Okay, so now we are time to actually start applying paint back onto this model. So I got some matte surface primer from Green Stuff World, and I applied a nice solid coat of this to the entire miniature, getting a nice strong but matte base coat for everything for us to build up from. Now I knew that I think the order of operation for doing these kind of scenery pieces is really, really important. So I decided to start with the tank. I'm going to make that as clean and fresh looking as possible, and then we'll add all of the kind of crap around it on top of it. That will add in all the dirt and all the extra debris and all that kind of stuff. If I did like the soil first, then I was trying to paint the tank around it, it just wouldn't work. So I take the tank to a almost completed stage as step one. And step one for me is, of course, getting some wraith bone and applying a nice solid coat of that to the tank, being as careful as possible not to hit too much of the surrounding area. Not that it matters too much, it's just, of course, a habit, being careful with an airbrush. It's almost like you practice with each time you use it. But this will give us a nice base coat to start building up some yellow from. And when the wraith bones was fully applied, we moved on to our Uriel yellow, and then applied a nice solid coat of yellow paint to this. Go in a few thin passes to get a nice coat, but don't kind of overdo it on any one specific area. Move slow and don't miss any sections either. It really is such a really lovely colored yellow. And the yellow tank just in this old ruined piece of scenery really does stand out much more than kind of anything else would. Maybe a White Scars tank would jump out as well, but the yellow is just so stark. Here we have our Scrag Brown, which we are airbrushing into the lower halves of the armor panels, adding in that extra bit of warmth anywhere it's like seams, around door hatches, a little bit of shadowy area. Just add a little bit more definition back into the tank. I ended up putting so much effort into the scenery piece that I kept thinking that I could have just painted an actual tank for my army. It was worth it. I really like how the scenery turns out. I've seen the final result, and I must say I'm quite pleased with myself. After this, we now bump up to Flash Gets Yellow, and we very carefully start to layer up the tank. This time we are definitely doing a much more controlled airbrush. We're just aiming for the kind of higher points of the panels. We don't want to take away that warmth from the lower sections or anywhere where there's supposed to be kind of shadow. We just want to hit those flat kind of surfaces, kind of edge towards the sun, and just hit them with that yellow. Like I said, I'm using a lot of trigger control here. I'm being very, very slow. I'm very, very kind of aimed with my directions with the airbrush. Obviously, the more you use an airbrush, the more practice you get in, the easier it is for you to have that kind of control. But if you do master that, it's just so easy to get such great results with an airbrush so fast that it definitely falls into that category of almost cheating. But yeah, the results speak for themselves. You can see the yellow really standing out and really starting to scream Imperial Fist tank. Here's all the airbrushing finished off on the tank for now. You can see already like the improvement from what it was before. I do love, I genuinely from the bottom of my heart love those kind of eBay rescue style videos. I know I didn't get this off eBay, but I think it's a buzz term that a lot of people understand, thanks to Casey. So I go with it, and it's such a satisfying kind of hobby project to take something that was kind of ruined or destroyed and bringing it back to life. I love it. Okay, time to get a little bit more airbrush done before we put away the airbrush for this particular project. So I got some nice dark slate gray on all of the stonework. That goes for the craters, which obviously have been artilleried into this poor kind of forested area. Obviously was the damage that destroyed the Rhino as well. But I'm going with that it was very old. This isn't freshly done, and that will be very apparent to you when it comes to the end. Nice, warm, rich brown is then used for all of the soil. Being careful when you're going around not to cover too much of the yellow tank if some overspray happens. That's exactly why we did the tank first, because it's okay to get the destroyed and forgotten tank a little bit muddy. I'm sure it wouldn't be pristine and clean. So yeah, but obviously, as you can see, I'm going quite slow and being quite precise. And that goes for those kind of rocky outcrops and the artillery holes as well. Those craters. A little bit of brown overspray is absolutely fantastic for all those rocks, but you don't want to cover up them all. We want it to seem as though this kind of rocky outcrop is showing through like the topography of the scenery. So this is about as much brown as I put on. You can see all the rocks showing through like I wanted. And now it's time, which another bizarre the kind of order of operation, before we start to actually weather it even more, it's time to actually put on the transfers and the kind of insignia that would have been on this tank originally, and put those all into place and secure it with a little bit of varnish. So the very last step for the airbrush for me will be after these transfers have applied. I've put on a matte kind of clear coat varnish across the entire tank just to secure all this in place and protect it a little bit from a bit more wear and tear, because obviously this is a scenery piece. People are going to be clambering models all over the tank, in and out of the craters and all over the scenery, so it's going to get kind of roughed up a little bit. So any little thing you can do to protect that paint job will be great. I'm not so much worried about it on the browns or the grays. It's more the yellow. Time for the silver. And I'm basically putting this onto any of the mechanism parts. You can see where the grill is blown open on the side there. So paint the entire interior of that silver. All the bullet holes and artillery strikes and small arms fire, which has pattered off the hulls, caused all these scratches and dents and holes. So I've put a little bit of silver in all of those as well. And then we've gone in for an edge highlight of Flash Kits yellow and then of Dorn yellow, which will really just elevate the tank again. It's such a simple thing. I know it seems like it's really hard work, but edge highlighting is not as daunting, especially on pieces like this, where it really doesn't have to be perfect. It's a scenery piece. You can see how quickly I'm moving along the edges of the tank. And the way it works is it's kind of like a trick of the mind. Nobody focuses on any one brush stroke you do. It's the entire kind of illusion of edge highlighting across the entire tank gives you a really nice look. Whereas if anyone paid attention to any one of those strokes, it would look kind of wonky or be a bit weird or a little bit too much or a little bit too or not enough. But as a whole, it just sells it really nice. Little bit of black pigment here. I'm adding into all the damaged areas, all those kind of bullet holes. Would be a little bit scorched. Obviously the tank itself is quite old, so feeding this into some more of the cracks and recesses of the tank are obviously going to make a huge difference. And obviously all the engine cowlings and all those kind of exhaust ports and stuff are kind of black soot kind of shooting out of it, so a little bit of black in there, it really helps to sell it. And then obviously I like to also overemphasize certain areas like door hatches and stuff opening and closes, so I like to run a little bit across the seam of the top hatch as well. Just to, once again, it just adds a tiny bit more detail. It takes seconds to do, but it does leave a much nicer result, I think, for it being, even on a tank that wasn't destroyed, I would do this kind of thing too. You can see me blowing it away here, and then this is what we're left with. It took, what, 2 seconds to do that, and I think the result is amazing. So when I've finished applying the pigment, that is when we are going to finally seal the tank in. All the lights are done, all the hatches are done. The tank is ready to rock and roll. So we've done the little varnish now. So it's time to finally do the rest of the scenery. It's kind of been a tank painting video for the first half of this video, hasn't it? First things first, dry brush of Rise of Rush, a nice warm orange color into all of the soil, and absolutely overshooting and hitting the rocks and stuff as well. It's all going to help it blend together. If it hits a bit of the tank, it's just totally fine. And I also did all of the tree stumps and the actual only remaining standing tree exactly the same as the ground foliage as well. So I dry brushed it orange, and then I dry brushed it up a very light bone over the top of that to help it all blend together and give us a really nice base for adding all of the kind of flock and plants and trees and all those other bits and pieces we're going to add, which are going to make this thing explode off the tabletop and look really, really awesome. You can see how the bone really works across the soil, makes it look less orange and more like old dirty earth. And then obviously across the tree stumps as well, it looks great. And the rocks. It's such a little kind of cheating thing. Bit of Rise of Rust and a bit of bone across a bone texture paste, or across a brown texture paste, leaves you with just such a nice result. I did spend a lot of time with all of the details that exist on this model. So there's discarded bolt guns, there's Space Marine helmets, shoulder pads, there's las guns and fallen equipment in amongst all of the ground coverage. And I didn't want to leave a single one of them behind. So every skull, every skeleton, every fallen las gun got painted up, layered, shaded. Like I said, the scenery piece is kind of hard to come by these days. They didn't sell many of them. I think it deserves all the details of it being brought out and the attention it deserves being bestowed upon it. The poor veteran sergeant's red helmet, which was discarded beside the Rhino. Him, his squad, and the fate of his tank are all but a mystery at this time, but you can see how it would become this thing that would be fought over. If my Imperial Fist army takes to the battlefield and they find out that there's a destroyed Rhino somewhere out there, they're going to try and recover this relic. An APC to them is not just another tank, it is a relic of their chapter, and they will try and recover it, try and find the fate of the poor Marines who used to be inside the Rhino, and maybe save any other equipments or relics that exist, recover armor, whatever needs to be recovered, they will recover it. You can see how the tree here looks. This is after the orange and bone dry brush. I think it looks really nice. And then obviously putting the extra attention into the skull and crossbones. Maybe this isn't artillery strikes. Maybe the Rhino slowly drove into a minefield and that caused the death of the tank. So the tall shrubbery from Green Stuff World is something that I've used on my river build over on my Lord of the Rings channel, Middle Earth Monday, if you want to check it out. And I've fallen in love. I think it's absolutely amazing. So I'm going to be covering this, festooning this scenery piece in all of the foliage and bits that they sent me over. And it really does, it just looks really cool. Obviously, all of the tree stumps are not supposed to be stumps. There's supposed to be 4 other trees on this scenery piece, which have long since been lost to time. So I'm going to use these stumps as the kind of bases for some flowery and shrubbery outcrops, which will hopefully help it blend in. It won't look like things are missing. It's supposed to be like the natural order of things. I think this is a great place to put these shrubs as well, because you can't place miniatures over the stumps. They would just fall over or be all kind of tipsy and stuff. So I'm using these areas to put in the pops of color. So I'm not taking away any playable surface of the scenery, but I'm also adding a lot of extra color and pop to it. Look how cool these look. It takes like 9 seconds to put them into place and they look really good. You can see that's literally the hole where the other tree is meant to plug in, and I just add some shrubs to it. All I do is got a clump of the shrubs. I clip them so all the bottoms are flat, and I add in some super glue where I need to put them in, and then place the shrubs. They hold in seconds, and you're left with this as the result. I think this definitely adds a certain pop of color to it, and it's obviously going to blend into the more natural table that I've been working on and that I'm planning to play a bunch of games of in 11th. So this is not the only scenery piece I shall be doing. I'm on the hunt for a couple of other pieces which I think will match in amazingly, so look out for those videos at some point soon. I actually have a crashed Aquila lander which I think will go really, really well into this table. I did it maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. So I think I'm going to go back to it and add in some more of these kind of shrubs and some flocks so it blends in with this scenery perfectly, and then add it to the table as well. It's going to be great. Obviously, some PVA glue was used on the surfaces so I could then flock the remaining sections of this piece of scenery, which is the final touch. Once I've applied this, we are done. We have completed the crashed or destroyed Rhino scenery that Games Workshop brought out in, I think, 2009 maybe. So 16 years ago this scenery came out. And I'm so happy to finally have one back in my collection. I'm so glad that I gave it the attention I think it deserves. And I'm really excited to use it as a objective-based scenery piece moving into 11th edition. I understand they may have fixed sizes, and they might have little bases like this is the scenery piece. Well, I can just change those rules a little bit for playing with my friends and say that this whole base represents a single solitary objective piece in games, and I don't think any of them will mind whatsoever. This is the final result. Please do let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Do you think it was worth the restoring, the time, the effort? Do you think that's the tank is the correct color? Should it be a different chapter? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I really do hope you enjoyed watching me save this beautiful piece of scenery, and you're looking forward to more videos in the very near future.